We are thrilled to have the Lieutenant Governor, Deidre Henderson, with us today, and just want to welcome you to the Policy Project's Leadership Speaker Series.
Thanks, Jane.
Welcome. So glad you can be with us. Let me introduce you to our community champions and our student ambassadors who know you well, but it'll be a thrill for me to introduce you formally. Lieutenant Governor Deidre Henderson lives in Spanish Fork, where she and her husband Gabe raised their children. They have 4 daughters, 1 son, and adorable grandsons. Great. In 2020, she was elected Utah's 9th Lieutenant Governor and now serves as the Beehive State's 2nd highest elected official, Chief Election Officer, and Secretary of State. She has decided and dedicated her time in office to removing barriers to success for Utahns and ensuring elections are properly run. A consensus seeker, she assembles different points of view to find appropriate solutions to problems, which we appreciate. She's a staunch advocate for expanding opportunities for all Utahns. She also serves on the executive committee of the National Lieutenant Governors Association and is vice chair of the Republican Lieutenant Governors Association. We are thrilled to have you, and you're just an example to all of us, and especially at the Policy Project, we feel like you really capture the essence of what we care about and are trying to do, and we are huge fans.
Likewise, and I love what the Policy Project is doing. What you've done in the past, what you're working on in the future, and everything you stand for.
Thank you. Well, let's jump right in. You have such an inspiring journey into public service. I was hoping you could share that journey with us because I know it's inspiring me, and I think it'll inspire the community champions and student ambassadors as they're seeking to jump in and find a way to serve.
Well, I thank you for asking me to share kind of how I got here. And I have to say right up front, I didn't aspire to be an elected official at all. How I got here is simply by stepping up, doing what was needed, and taking those opportunities for hard work and effort as they came. And as I did that, doors opened. And that's, I think, an overriding lesson that I have learned in my life is you don't just show up somewhere and be what be what you are. It takes a journey. It's a huge journey. There are a lot of steps along the way, and you may not end up where you started off going. So I got married really young. I was 18. I got married after my freshman year at BYU. And I had to drop out of school to work 2 jobs to help put my husband through physical therapy school. And then I had 5 babies in 8 years. So by the time I was 28, I had 5 children and spent my 20s and early 30s really that was all I did was my kids. And that was okay. That was what I wanted to do. But I also, as my youngest started school, I wanted to go back to school. I wanted to get more involved in the community. I was still very young and didn't really know how to go about getting involved in the community. I happened to meet someone who was running for Congress who needed phone calls to be made, needed volunteers. Yeah. He couldn't afford to pay people who knew what they were doing. So we got people like me who had no clue, but were willing to make phone calls. And one thing led to another, and I ended up becoming his political director that year. This was 2008. And I always say, if I would have known at the beginning of 2008 what that year would look like for me, how much work it was, I would never have done it. So I'm really glad I didn't know.
It's not the case with so many things you do.
Yeah. It's a good thing I didn't know what I was getting myself into because I never would have done it if I would have known. And I'm really glad that I did it. I became his political director, worked the entire year for free, 12 to 14 hours a day, 7 days a week for a year. We got him elected to Congress. I ended up running his political operation out of my laundry room for like 4 years. After he was elected, I finally, I actually had the experience now, and I decided that I needed to make sure that I was actually being paid and paid what I was worth at that point. But by volunteering, by stepping forward, by stepping out of my comfort zone, doing things that made me uncomfortable, I learned a lot. I gained a lot of contacts and networking and experience that really helped me. And then a few years later, during the last redistricting in 2011, they had created a new state Senate seat down in South Utah County where I live. And so when that came available, I decided to run for the state Senate. Not anything I'd ever set out to do or thought I would do or even knew how to go about doing a couple of years earlier. And so I won a seat in 2012 in the Utah State Senate. And then 8 years later, I served 2 terms. 8 years later, then Lieutenant Governor Spencer Cox was running for governor, needed to select a running mate and asked me to be his running mate. So I, instead of running for re-election to the Senate, I ran for lieutenant governor and won in 2020 and have been serving as lieutenant governor since January of 2021.
What an incredible story. I'm in awe. So as I'm hearing your story, there had to be bumps along the way and maybe limiting thoughts as you're working in your laundry room and doing this and expanding into a new area. What advice would you give women and youth who are having limiting thoughts or feeling like this is a whole new ball game that I'm kind of jumping into? What advice would you give them?
I would say to people young people or older people who are looking at maybe trying to do something new or expand what they're doing, don't take counsel from your fears. That is something that I heard as a freshman at BYU, that a phrase that literally changed my life, and one that I have had to repeat to myself over and over again. Yeah. Fear is very self-limiting. Fear of failure, sometimes fear of success, fear of looking bad. Be brave enough to fail at what you do and to be bad at what you do. So just every time I feel that fear, it's a red flag for me to say, okay, there are a lot of good reasons not to do something, but being afraid of it should never be the reason. And so that's the first thing. The second thing is, it's okay that you don't know everything about something before you get started in it. It's okay to learn along the way. And that is another self-limiting thing sometimes for us is, okay, I really don't know everything about this, and I don't want to look bad. I don't want people to know that I don't know everything, and so I'm going to hold back. It's okay to jump in, ask questions, learn, be curious, and not know everything right up front about what it is that you're getting yourself into. Learning along the way is a really, really important lesson that I have learned.
That is such great advice. And I love that most people in the room that you deal with don't exactly know what they're doing either. I think that is a thought that we also think as we're afraid and entering something new. We figure that everyone else has it all figured out, and we're the only ones who don't know what we're doing.
Right. And sometimes if you are the one who's brave enough to ask the question, like, okay, you guys, like, sorry, lay it out for me.
Yes.
You know what? A bunch of other people are probably wondering the same thing, and you've just helped them all out too.
Absolutely. I think that I was in a meeting once, and the man conducting the meeting was asked a question, and he said, I don't know the answer to that, but I'll find out. Yep. And I just thought, wow, that is powerful. And it was an example to all of us in the meeting that we don't have to have all the answers.
Right.
So I love that advice, and especially don't take counsel from your fears. That's so great. Well, I want to segue into service. I know that you are passionate about service and the good that it can do for the citizens of Utah, old and young, and just wanted to see if you could share with us this initiative you've been working on for high school students.
Yes, I would love to, and
or anything else.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to maybe describe why I think service is important and what I why I feel that way, what happened to help me feel that way. A few years ago, it was 2022, March of 2022. I had the opportunity to visit Israel with 5 other lieutenant governors, and it really was a life-changing experience. Israel, as we all know, has a lot of problems. There are a lot of conflicts and challenges there, and there are a lot of different groups of individuals who live in Israel or in that region who, no matter what it is that their governments are doing, they have to live together somehow. And we, Israel's old cities, thousands of years old, little cobblestone streets, hard to get to places with a lot of people densely packed in. And they were having problems with people who needed emergency services dying, right? People would have a heart attack, or a kid was choking on something, and they would die because by the time an ambulance could get to them, it was too late. It took so long, an hour or more for an ambulance to get to them. So because of this problem, a group of individuals decided to roll up their sleeves and figure out how to solve it. So they created an organization called United Hatzalah. And Hatzalah is just the Hebrew word for rescue. And if you've ever gotten an Uber, you pull up the Uber app and you can see all the drivers, the cars like around. Yeah. It's kind of like EMS, emergency medical services, like Uber. Okay. And so you've got people who might be a doctor, or might be a teacher, or a student, or some other profession, and no matter where they are in Israel, if they're visiting their parents, or they're on vacation, or at their work, they have a pager. And if there's and so dispatch can see where they all are, and when there's an emergency, the closest person gets pinged, and they have everything in their car or on the back of their bike or their motorcycle, everything that an ambulance would have except a stretcher. So they can get right to the patient, they can stabilize them, they can give them oxygen or whatever until an ambulance can get there and take them off to the hospital. Well, this was just a remarkable idea, and we're looking at this this organization and visiting with them, and I asked, and I know we've got similar challenges with emergency medical services needs in Utah and rural Utah, and I said, well, help me understand, how much do you pay these folks to do it? And the organizers said, well, we don't pay them anything. They wouldn't do this for $25, but they'll do it for free.
They'll do it for free.
And that was this aha moment for me. I said, tell me more about that. Why would they do it for free, but not do it for $25?
Yeah.
And they said, well, because service is ingrained in Israelis. It's what we do. It's who we are. We do service as a couple of years of service as part of our high school graduation requirements. We all serve in the military. We just giving back is what we do. And they also described the beauty of having, Hasidic Jews or Palestinians or Muslims or Christians all having to work together. When they go see the patient, you don't ask what gender they are. You don't ask what religion they are.
Exactly.
It crosses barriers in ways that can't happen otherwise, and brings people together and unites them for a common purpose in a way that is remarkable. And it got me to thinking, we have not just a practical need with, needing all our EMS folks are aging out, right? And we're having a hard time getting young people to want to step up and do that. But we're having other challenges in the state. We're becoming increasingly isolated. We're becoming polarized. We're getting into little echo chamber bubbles where we're not interacting with people who think or believe differently than we do, or different economic status than we are. And as we kind of conglomerate into these little isolated bubbles, it's not good for us. It's not good for society. It's not good for the state. But the way we can break through all of that, the way we can bring people together across generations, across socioeconomic boundaries, across beliefs, political or religious or otherwise, is through service.
Through service. I love it.
We started looking at the benefits of service. And it's not only beneficial in all of those ways, it's also beneficial to the giver of the service in that it helps with mental health challenges. It helps with depression. It helps young people who have developed a habit of service are more likely to be good citizens when they grow up. They're more likely to be engaged in their communities, to vote. They are more likely to look at problems and instead of complain about them, roll up their sleeves and try to work together to solve them. And so this idea of building a culture of service in our high schools is one that we've really been focusing on. And we've got some money appropriated from the legislature earlier this year. We will be rolling out later this year a service initiative pilot program for high schools. We've got 5 school districts or statewide online charter high school also that is going to be doing this, where we will build, and this cannot be a state top-down thing. This is got to be built from the school districts and the schools up, and building that culture of service. Now, a lot of your students, your ambassadors, these are the young people who already do this, and we see the benefit. We see how incredible they are, what leaders they are, and we need them to keep being leaders. But what we also need is for them to branch out and envelop people who maybe aren't giving service, who maybe aren't natural leaders, and try to widen that net and include everybody. That's what the service initiative is for. It's to widen that net and catch those who maybe aren't already prone to doing what all of your incredible student ambassadors are already doing.
Well, I'm thinking about this and thinking that we have student ambassadors across the state who have signed themselves up to do this, who will be an advocate for this pilot program and already are in the habit of service. And there's, thousands of students across the state too that are going to embrace this and benefit from it. And I'm so excited about it. Obviously, as the director of the Student Ambassador Program, I am thrilled about this pilot program and just think it will really benefit everyone. I mean, it's a win-win-win for our state, for the students, for the schools, for the people who are served. I'm really excited about this and can't wait to follow how this program rolls out and how we can help and get involved.
I'm thrilled, and your program is exactly the type of program that we need to model, right? And help use all of your network of ambassadors throughout the state to provide opportunities to serve. Your organization has already given so much service and brought so many people together, and we need more of that. We just need more.
It was exciting. Part of this program is to educate on service, leadership, and advocacy, and then they have a task that they implement. And last year, it was literally how to plan and execute a service project and how to get involved. So I really am thrilled about this program. Well, I wanted to ask too, what happens when you are hitting a wall and you're involved in a project or in something that you're working on? What advice would you give to our group of what to do? So if you've hit a wall and you just can't get to where the goal you're trying to achieve, or the job that you want to get, or you didn't get the scholarship that you were going out for, what advice would you give the community champions and student ambassadors?
Well, I love the analogy of a wall. We hear about glass ceilings a lot.
Yes.
And in my experience, it's not so much a glass ceiling as it is a brick wall. Mm-hmm. And I've used that same analogy so many times. When you encounter that brick wall, what do? Do you let it stop you? Do you figure out how to get around the brick wall? Do you tunnel under it? Do you go around it? Do you get a ladder and go over it? Do you start tearing down brick by brick so that the next person has an easier time getting over it? When I encounter challenges, a couple of things. First of all, I have a tendency sometimes to get easily discouraged. And I have to check myself, because discouragement is it's giving into discouragement almost is like giving into fear, right? It's almost an excuse not to do something.
Yeah.
You have to be realistic, though. And it's no use running into that brick wall and getting beat on the forehead constantly, right? And having bruises all over your face. So rather than get discouraged about something when I'm encountering a barrier, I often try to figure out unique ways to go about doing it a different way. And I did this with legislation. Every year when I was in the state Senate, I had at least one bill that was a real beast, that was a real challenge, but that I cared deeply about. And sometimes I had to pause and run the bill the next year after doing my homework a little bit more, laying the foundation a little bit more. So trying to, not let discouragement get you, but also being realistic about, maybe I'm not going about this the right way and I need to change tactics, right? Or sometimes change a goal. It's also important to remember why you're doing what you're doing, because you're not going to get everything you want. And that's part of life, and it's okay. And sometimes those defeats or those discouragements or being forced to innovate and try to do things a different way actually end up making you better and stronger, or making what you're trying to do better in the end. So nothing worth doing is easy.
Yeah.
And we always face challenges when we're doing something important. But it's very important to not let those get us down, but to also understand that maybe being a little bit creative and figuring out a different way to get around that wall is what's necessary and needed, and what's going to help the people coming behind us.
I love that thought of paving the way and breaking down some of the wall for the people behind us, that sometimes our work doesn't end with us, that sometimes we're the beginning, we are the beginning of breaking down that wall, and it's someone else is going to complete the work for us, but that we can do our part to pave the way and to break down that barrier. And then that is a win too. That's a win too, to pave the way for someone else to finish the work.
It's very important for people, especially young people, I think, not to feel discouraged if they don't totally complete what it is they're setting out to do. To not get trapped into the idea that if you don't solve this big social problem, then you have somehow failed. We do our little bits of good. We lift where we stand. We do our part. And we really do need to be okay with the idea that we're not going to solve all of these problems. We might be able to solve putting period products in schools, right? We may be able to solve some piece of it, but we're not going to solve all of it. And that's okay. It's okay. It takes all of us, our combined efforts, to do our bit of good. And we need to be okay with that.
Well, I agree 100%. And this has just been absolutely inspiring and delightful to be with you today. As we're wrapping up, is there any last thoughts things that you're working on that you want to invite us into, or be aware of as a state, that as citizens of the state, that you would like us to be aware of, or think about, or look into, or join you in a cause? Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us today?
Well, I guess in parting, I would encourage all of your student ambassadors to be mindful of those who aren't at the table. To always look around and see who's missing, and and be the one who notices. Be the one who notices who's not there, and be the inviter. Oftentimes, we see the big, huge problems, the big, sexy things that people are working on and get a lot of attention. But sometimes the small things are even more important. And as long as we stay curious and open to seeing what those needs are and who's missing at the table, and doing our bit to make sure that another chair can get pulled up and more people can get invited in, I think that's probably the most important thing anyone can do.
I love that. And I love that. And I love that it's such a simple thing to do. And it's so impactful that every person has a circle of influence. Every person has people on their street, people in their neighborhood that they influence. And if every person had eyes to see who wasn't at their table, who they didn't see on the street this week and needed just a little invitation into whatever they're doing, it would improve our neighborhoods and communities and our state. So I thank you for sharing that. Well, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time. And we hope that we'll see you soon. And we're excited about this high school service initiative, this pilot program, and can't wait to support you in that.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Jenny.
Thank you.